Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another installment of Scott's Selections here for March 26th. To recap just quickly what happened yesterday with regard to the premium play. This is a trick question. We didn't have one because the card itself wasn't that great. However, I did give out some leans on the games yesterday. And overall, it's a good thing I didn't have a premium play because those leans turned out to go about 50-50, give or take. Lost a couple just initially with West Virginia. I thought they'd come out with a little bit of a better effort in Utah Valley, but I was right about Longwood plus the points. I was right about Texas Southern. Overall, it was pretty even throughout. Loyola Marymount also got a win. But overall, the card wasn't that great, and tonight is a very similar story where there are even less games tonight. There were a couple of games that I thought about potentially turning into my pick of the day, but instead I'm just not going to have a pick of the day. Again, sorry if you're looking for quick selections, but I said before yesterday, I'm just looking for value, and I'm not going to force a pick if I believe that there is not anything with enough value out there. But similar to yesterday, before we get into the main topic, which is the Sweet 16 games coming up, we are actually going to cover briefly the games tonight, as I will give my leans once again on my thoughts for the card of March 26th. So without further ado, we are going to get that underway. First game that we are going to be talking about is between Hampton and Charleston Southern, where the line currently, Hampton is favored by 1.5 points, up to 2 in some spots, and the over or under is at roughly 157 at this point in time by recording. My initial thoughts on this game are actually going to be siding with – how's it going, Phil? Thanks for joining us. If you ask me right now who I think is going to win this game, I'm going to go with Hampton minus the 1.5. Charleston Southern, only 4-10 on the road. Hampton is 11-3 at home. And there's also a rare occasion where the teams playing in the CIT have played each other in the regular season because they are in the same conference. Most of these tournaments are based so that way you can have teams from different conferences who would never play each other to clash in a winner-take-all situation. These teams have actually played each other. And in the first game that took place in Hampton, Hampton was able to win 94-82. So at first glance, I like Hampton in this game at minus 1.5, and I thought about turning that into a pick of the day, but instead I'm just going to use it as a lean. And I also like the over in this game, which has taken money from 155.5 to about 157, because of the fact that the first meeting between these teams combined for 176 points. And in that first matchup, Charleston Southern only shot 40% from the floor, yet they put up 84 points. So I expect a lot of points in this game. How's it going? Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, George. Welcome aboard. Thanks for joining us here. But overall, we are going to be leaning towards the home team in Hampton and the over in that game, but nothing is going to be a pick of the day, as I said before. Now between Wichita State and Indiana. Indiana started at 5.5, down to 4 as a favorite at home against Wichita State, and the total has gotten a little bit of money as it's up to 138. As far as I can tell at this point in time. It's at 138 all around, except BetOnline has 137.5 with a lot of juice attached to it. For that game, I don't have any thoughts. I'd lean Indiana just because of the fact that they're really good at home, and Indiana has upset a decent amount of teams in conference play at home, while Wichita State has struggled mightily on the road this season. Indiana 15-5 at home. Wichita 6-7 on the road. They did pick it up later in the year, but that is also against worse competition, as Big Ten has turned out to be one of the most well-rounded conferences, as the NCAA tournament has indicated, due to their win-loss record out of those conference teams, with the exception of my Wisconsin Badgers, who decided to lose to Oregon as the only Big Ten team in the first round, unable to win again. But I'm not going to go ahead and talk about that. Moving on, you have Presbyterian versus Marshall. Lean to Marshall here, -6. I also like this play, based on the fact that Marshall, they did make the NCAA tournament last year. Elmore is still there, still very solid shooter, and Marshall has been extremely solid at home. Money has come in on the over, but I don't really know how confident I feel in taking an over at 169 in a college basketball game. That's a lot of points, but it makes sense because Marshall loves to play extremely up-tempo, but they are only 6-9 at home ATS this season, Marshall at home, whereas Presbyterian is actually 14-5 on the road this season ATS. I still lean Marshall -6, in my opinion, just based on the fact that Marshall definitely has more talent, and they played in the significantly harder conference during the season. So I think Marshall is more battle tested, and I think they will come out trying to win. But I also got burned by Marshall in the first round game against IUPUI, where I thought they would cover the spread, and they did not. So a slight lean to Marshall. Moving on, you have Florida International versus Green Bay. The total right now is one of the highest totals of the college basketball season, where the total it started at 176.5. It's all the way up to 179 in some spots. Mostly it is at 178.5 at some books. I know this sounds crazy, but I'd have to lean to the over in that one. Both teams love to play up tempo. Both teams play no defense. Cohen's really good for Green Bay. Florida International has a lot of scores, and I'd have to lean to the over in that one, but I'm not exactly that confident in that one. And moving on, you have TCU versus Creighton. TCU currently at -3.5. I will lean to the Horned Frogs in this game. This team did win the NIT last year. Now they're back at it again. They're also at home. This team was in line to make it to the NCAA tournament, probably as roughly an 8 or a 9 seed, before absolutely imploding in the last month due to some injuries to some key players, but they have returned. Creighton's a good team. They were awful in the beginning of the season. They almost had some key wins, but always choked games down the stretch. But they are also 4-7 on the road this season, where TCU is 14-5. I think 3.5 is a little bit low in this point range, so I will be leaning towards TCU. So my leans on all the games I just gave, but if you ask me right now, my best leans are the ones I'm most confident in. I definitely like the Hampton spread in this game. As for the over, I'm a little bit hesitant just because in that first game, Hampton did shoot 55% from the floor, and I think that Charleston Southern will be able to use their film from the first matchup to play a little bit better defense, but I will be leaning towards Hampton to win this full game at -1.5, just because of the fact that they're 11-3 at home. They've already beaten Charleston by double digits at home. This game will probably be closer, but I like Hampton to get the job done. And I also like TCU as my second favorite lean, based on the fact that this team has gone through the gauntlet of the NIT last season, and they're the defending champions, and they will be looking for another championship this year. I know the team's motivated behind Weber as the coach. Creighton's is a pretty good team, but they're also very streaky in the offensive end, and they are not great on the road. So my two best leans, as I said before, will be Hampton -1.5 and TCU -3.5. But now, for the moment that everyone's been waiting for, and the title of the video suggests, it's time for us to start going over the Sweet 16 matchups. And before anybody asks why I'm going over these on Tuesday when the first games are on Thursday, the answer is that I'm trying to beat any type of line movement that might come in. And I feel like if I'm able to get out the information as soon as possible, then you might be able to find a specific line that will be unavailable on Wednesday or even Thursday. So I feel like there is a lot of value on this current board, and I'll be going through those. And I will be starting off I'll be going in order with the times of the game itself. So Thursday, March 28th, the first game on the docket will be Gonzaga and Florida State. These teams actually played last season. How's it going, Hank? Thanks for joining us. These teams actually played last year in the NCAA tournament, where Florida State was able to pull off the upset and win by double digits. I don't know about you. This spread makes no sense to me. Gonzaga's opened up at 7. I thought that was high, and now it's up to 7.5. These teams are very similar to last year's teams, except for the fact that Gonzaga's best player, in my opinion, who is Clark, a big man who had over 35 points, broke Adam Morrison's school record for most points in an NCAA tournament game. He was on the team last year. He's on the team now. I think Clark is a tremendous player. I think he's the best player on the entire team. But Florida State is still extremely good. They have a decent amount of their players back from last season with Terrence Mann, as well as just the large amount of big men that they have in the paint. And as I said before in the comment section of a previous video, somebody asked me about taking Murray State as a money line underdog. And I said I would not do that because Florida State is just too good on the boards. They draw too many fouls. They look, so far in the first 2 rounds, I know that they've ended up playing against 2 double-digit seeds because of the fact that Murray State was able to pull off the upset against Marquette. Florida State, in my opinion, has looked like the most impressive team. That performance against Murray State was an absolute destruction, and I think this team is poised to make another serious run in the tournament. But the fact that Gonzaga is favored by 7.5 makes this look like the ultimate trap line. If you ask me what I thought this spread would be, I'd assume it would be roughly around 4 because of the fact that Gonzaga is a 1 seed and Florida State's a 4. So I get the fact that you want to include some point differential to express the fact that there's a huge seeding differential between these teams. But 7.5, I just think is too many points. I think Florida State plus 7.5 has a lot of value. I expect buyback on Florida State by tip-off. I expect this line to close at around 7 or 6.5. So if I were you, I would personally be putting a little bit of coin on Florida State plus the 7.5 right now. As for me personally, if you want to be a little bit bolder, I can understand why you would take Florida State on the money line. But as I said before, this point spread is relatively concerning if you like the dog in this game. But the money lines are at roughly plus 270, plus 280, so there's a lot of value on there. I will probably sprinkle a little bit of coin on Florida State money line and Florida State plus 7.5. Right now, maybe put the 7.5 in an open parlay if your book allows you to do that. I think there's too much value on Florida State in this game. Total's already come down from 148.5 to 147, which means that they expect a more defensive battle between these two teams. And if that's the case, with less points, I have to assume that Florida State, you tend to support the underdog with less points because, the points are going to be coming at a premium, so that way, the spread will be closer. So based on that, I think Florida State will cover this number. But moving on, Purdue versus Tennessee. Tennessee, it opened up at Pick'em. Tennessee up to 1.5 and even 2 at Bovada. But in terms of this game, Purdue has definitely looked like the better of these two teams early on, especially with the way that Purdue absolutely demolished the defending champion Villanova Wildcats, and Carson Edwards had 40-plus points by hitting 9 threes. Villanova was completely lost. Purdue's looked fantastic, especially with Edwards performing extremely well with Harms as a 7'3" center in the middle. Their size presents a lot of issues for Tennessee. Grant Williams is a very solid player, operates a lot on the post, but he's also extremely undersized. And Grant Williams at roughly 6'5" for 6'6", he's going to be guarding Harms, and Harms is going to have a 7-inch minimum reach advantage, or height advantage, I should say, on Williams. I do think that Schofield is better than Carson Edwards in college basketball. I love Schofield. I know he got benched by Rick Barnes at the end of that Iowa game due to some turnovers late. Do I think he should have been benched? No. In terms of coaching, do I really like either of these coaches? No. I think Barnes has done a great job with Tennessee, but he has been known to choke in the NCAA tournament in the past. And Painter's been good, but I would say that he has not been great as his teams have tended to lose in the Sweet 16 and have not been able to get to the Elite Eight, which has eluded him over the last couple of seasons. And I actually saw a stat that came up regarding Matt Painter, which is the fact that Matt Painter in the NCAA tournament is 0-7 straight up against top 3 seeds, including losses by 13 and 32 in the Sweet 16 in the last 2 seasons. So based on that, I know Tennessee has shown some issues, they've shown some holes, and that was a monumental choke job, regardless of the fact that they won. You can't blow a 25-point lead in the second half. That's just unacceptable. But they pulled through. In terms of this game, I would have to lean Tennessee. Purdue makes a lot of sense, but the fact that money has come in on Tennessee early on makes me believe that that is definitely sharp money because of the fact that Purdue has looked significantly better than Tennessee so far in this tournament, but yet Tennessee is getting all the money. So I will be leaning towards Tennessee in this game. Both coaches I'm not a fan of, but Tennessee, I think, is a little bit deeper, and Purdue had their best defender get injured before the Old Dominion game, and he is still out. So I like Tennessee due to their depth. If Purdue wins, would I be surprised? No, Purdue definitely has some type of length as well as three-point shooting, which could present problems for Tennessee. But I'm going to be riding the public money. I'm going to be riding the sharp money, I should say. Sorry to say that. And I will be leaning towards Tennessee. Moving on, you have Michigan and Texas Tech. Michigan originally opened up at -2. Now they're down to 1.5 at some spots, but it's still primarily -2. I will be leaning towards Michigan in this game. Texas Tech looked great against Buffalo, and they pretty much sabotaged the bracket that I shared with all of you about a week and a half ago, whereas Michigan looked extremely solid against Florida, but Florida is an offensively inept team. In terms of this game, I will be siding with Michigan. I think Michigan's deeper on offense. Texas Tech has some good players behind Mooney and Culver, but overall, I don't think they have much depth on the offensive forefront. Plus, I don't know about you, but I will never go against Beilein in the tournament. He is, in my opinion, the most underrated coach in all of college basketball. And what he's been able to do with Michigan year in and year out in the NCAA tournament, including making it to the championship game last season, Michigan, I feel like, is almost a lock every year to make the Elite Eight just because of the fact that Beilein is their head coach. He's tremendous. Do I love Chris Beard as the coach for Texas Tech? Of course I do. I think he's a great coach as well. But Beilein's been there before with Michigan. They are definitely trying to make it back to another Final Four. I think this team's more experienced than Texas Tech's, and I will be going with the Michigan State. I'll be going with the Michigan Wolverines -1.5 right now, and I would expect this line to close at roughly 2 or 2.5 with Michigan. So if you like Michigan, I would suggest taking them now at 1.5 at either 5 Dimes or Pinnacle. Now moving on, you have the last game on Thursday where you have Oregon versus Virginia. Spread is at 8.5 throughout. It did go down to 8 in some spots, but then money got bought back on Virginia to bring the spread back to 8.5. The total in this game is also taking a little bit of over money as it was at 118. Now it's up to 119.5 in some spots, primarily 119 in most books. In this game, I got to like the underdog here in sense of points. Virginia is a solid team, but they have been known to get off to some slow starts. In the tournament, they were down to Gardner-Webb. They also struggled for the first 10 minutes against Oklahoma. I think Oregon is a very physical team. They're a very defensive-minded team. I think this game will be close throughout. Maybe Virginia will be able to cover due to late-game free throws, but I just don't see enough points in this game for Virginia to cover. I expect this game to go under. I think this game will be in the 50s or in the low 60s. So based on that, I simply just don't think Virginia is going to score enough points to cover this 8.5. If you want to be bold and try to get a bigger payout in this game, which is something that I'm actually kind of recommending, I'm a fan of Oregon first half money line in this game against Virginia. Oregon, I know the Pac-12 has had a down year, but Oregon's on fire. They have won double-digit games in a row. Virginia's been good, but they have been known to get off to some extremely slow starts before picking it up in the second half. And I think Oregon will come out with a lot of physicality, which will get Virginia off their game early. Do I think Oregon will win the game? I'll tell you what, I think they have a chance. I think Oregon has the ability to pull off this 12-1 upset, but based on how the tournament has been going so far, I have to assume the favorite's going to get the job done because of the fact that the favorites went 16-0 in the round of 32. So I think Virginia will end up squeaking out a win here. But if you want a payout at over the plus 200s, I think that Oregon first half money line definitely possesses a lot of value, as Oregon will be looking to get off to a fast start. Plus, Virginia has been known to struggle in the past against presses, and Oregon has been known under Coach Altman to run some full court presses or even half court trap sets to turn over their opponents. I think Altman's a great coach. I think Bennett's a great coach. It's relatively even. 8.5 is too many points for me. That's represented by the seeding. But I think Oregon plus the points is the move, and I also like Oregon first half money line if you want to throw in a little bit of maybe a half unit, quarter unit just for a big payout. Welcome, Guap Gucci. Thank you for coming by. I mentioned that game earlier. If you asked, I don't really have many thoughts on that, but I would have to go with Indiana at home minus the 4 just because of the fact that Indiana. I know they struggled in the first round against St. Francis before picking it up in the second half, but I will go with Indiana. That team is really good. Plus Assembly Hall, they've been really good at home. They've upset some big teams in conference play with Michigan State, Wisconsin, stuff along those lines. I think that Indiana's played the harder schedule, and they've also won a couple of big home games. Indiana, I think, will get the job done this Tuesday night. I expect the Assembly Hall to be rocking. I think Indiana will get the job done in that game. But moving forward, that's going to do it for the Thursday games. Moving on to the Friday games, Michigan State versus LSU. A lot of money on the under so far. It went from 150 to 148.5. Michigan State is a steady 6 in this game. In terms of talent, I actually think LSU is the more talented team over Michigan State. But LSU's interim coach has been awful in the second half. And the issue that I have with LSU is that they've been really good in the first half of both games. And then in the second half, they've been completely outcoached, and the team seems to be caught in quicksand in the second half as Yale was able to come back, and they almost blew a double-digit lead to Maryland in the second half of the round of 32 game before Waters hit that game-winning layup. I'd have to lean Michigan State here. LSU, if they had Wade as their coach, I think would win this game outright. But I don't trust their interim coach. Is 6 too many points? A little bit. Yeah, in terms of spread, I'd still lean Michigan State full game because of the late game fouling. But I know Izzo's going to get the best out of his players. Whether or not you like the way that he yells at his players or the way that he just interacts with them, he's still one of the best college coaches of all time. and I think that he will be able to get Michigan State to the Elite Eight for a potential matchup against Duke. Brian Richmond, for some sites that offer it, I know that 5Dimes does offer first half money lines. In terms of other sites, I'm pretty sure UWager does as well, although I can't confirm that. Bovada definitely offers first half money lines in that game. For BetOnline, I don't know. I've never really had an account on BetOnline. Sorry to hear that. Even if you're not able to get the money line on that game, the plus 4.5 or whatever the first half spread is also looks like a pretty good deal. So if you can't get the money line there, I mentioned that because the plus was in the 200s. So I think there's a lot of value on that if you wanted to put a little sprinkle early on before, in my opinion, the line will come down due to some late money on Oregon. But I think that the first half spread and the full game spread should be enough to get the money in. Or if you even like correlated parlays, the under's tricky because of the fact that it's in the high 1-teens. But I still think that game's going to go under. Based on Virginia's tempo and Oregon's tempo and the fact that both of them play very good defense, that game's going to be in the 50s for me. I don't see much points. It's going to be a very boring game unless you're a fan of pretty much Big Ten basketball where you like very low-scoring physical games where the offenses look lost for the majority of the game. That's what I expect. But sorry that BetOnline doesn't offer first-half money lines. I think there's a lot of value on that, but I know Bovada does, and I know that 5Dimes does as well, and I'm pretty sure UWager also offers first-half money lines. But I'm going to go with Michigan State on a brief lean here. I also like the under. Just a lot of money coming in on the under. LSU has a lot of offensive firepower, but they have struggled dealing with some zone defenses as well as just second-half adjustments. And Michigan State, if they are losing, I know that Izzo's very crafty. I know he'll switch something up if it's not working. I would not be surprised to see Michigan State potentially switch to a zone defense if they are getting carved up in man-to-man. Yeah, Guap, no problem. Welcome to the show. I mentioned it earlier, but you were definitely joining us later, so more than happy to go back for it and briefly mention it. As I said before, though, I'm leaning towards Indiana in that game, but I have no picks of the day once again. Moving on, North Carolina and Auburn. The total in this game has flown towards the over, where it was at 160. Now it's up to 164.5 in some spots, so 164. I don't know how many of you watch ESPN with Scott Van Pelt. I think he does a great job, but the reason why I bring that up is because of the fact that he actually interviewed Auburn coach Bruce Pearl the other day. And Scott Van Pelt has tended to ask, he's very big on betting in his show. For LSU first half play, I'm not going against Izzo in that game. That's one of those games where I think LSU has more talent, so it wouldn't surprise me if they originally kind of shock Michigan State with their length. Michigan State's center is Nick Ward, whereas Naz Reid alone is 4 inches taller than Nick Ward, so I think there will be some issues originally for Michigan State to deal with his height. But overall, I'm not going against Izzo. Phil, if you want to take the first half, you can with the plus, but I'm personally not going to be touching that game. That was just my initial thoughts. But as I was saying before, Scott Van Pelt's very into gambling on a show with his Bad Beats segment, which is one of my favorite segments on television. But he also interviews some coaches from time to time, and he interviewed the Auburn coach earlier this week. And Bruce Pearl, very charismatic guy from Auburn after he had the scandal with Tennessee before he ended up leaving the program. He even admitted on the show, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, look this up because it's actually very funny. Bruce Pearl admitted on the show to take the over. And it's kind of funny because of the fact that a coach in college basketball was talking about gambling, but he pretty much admitted, take the over. We like to play fast. North Carolina likes to play fast. And he admitted that we're not going to slow the game down just to get in North Carolina's way. We're going to go up tempo. They're going to go up tempo. So if Auburn's coach said to take the over, I'd recommend taking the over. That's just my hunch. In terms of the actual spread of the game, I love North Carolina -5 here. It might be my premium in a day or two. I'm still looking at the entire board, looking for some line movements. I'd say right now my two premiums or what I'm leaning towards for pick of the day would either be North Carolina on Friday and Florida State +7.5 on Thursday, but that is not official yet. I will have to go through all the trends and look to see if I'm missing anything that can help explain these point spreads. Auburn lives and dies by the 3. And in some situations, it works like it did against Kansas. So overall, Auburn loves to shoot a lot of threes. They jack up a lot of shots, mostly inefficiently. And North Carolina will dominate on the boards. They got the height. Nasir Little has been tremendous for North Carolina in the last couple of games. He struggled the entire season long as this high recruit, but he's had, I think, 39 points in the first 2 games of the tournament. I'm talking about 39 points combined. So North Carolina is more physical. They have more experience, and they have more height. Auburn will chuck up a lot of threes, and if they go in, they'll probably cover. I think North Carolina is going to get a lot more easy baskets in the paint with Luke May, as well as Little, Even Johnson, and Kobe White's also a tremendous point guard. I think North Carolina has too many weapons. I think North Carolina is almost a lock to play Kentucky in the Elite Eight, and I'm going to be going with North Carolina -5 in that game, along with the over. The over, I don't know how many points this over is going to be steamed up by. It's already been steamed up by 4 points, and I don't see any under money coming anytime soon. So if I were you, I'd probably take the over if you like it now, sooner rather than later, as well as the potential first half over if you want to try to find a better number. But the fact that Auburn's coach admitted on air on ESPN to take the over, it could be a smokescreen. I doubt it. I think Bruce Pearl is serious. I think that they are just going to try to outpace North Carolina in a game that should feature 170-plus points. So for that game, as I said before, North Carolina -5 and the over. Moving on, Duke and Virginia Tech. Duke at -7. Now, Duke almost lost to UCF, as everybody knows, and they were a tip-in away from actually losing that game. Do I think this spread of 7 is warranted? I think it's warranted because of the seeding and because of the fact that Duke almost beat Virginia Tech in Virginia Tech with Zion out. But it is important to mention that Robinson was not playing for Virginia Tech either, so now both teams are at full strength. I think UCF was just a brutal matchup for Duke because of the fact that you have a 7'6" center in there and Duke can't shoot from the outside. Or Virginia Tech, they do have Blackshear as a big man, but Zion will definitely have an easier time getting into the paint along with Barrett and Reddish. Taco did foul out in that game, and Zion did put on a show as everyone expected him to, based on the fact that he was playing in South Carolina where he went to high school in that game. But I definitely think that Duke will have an easier time getting to the rim in this game. The spread is high. If you ask me who I think will cover the spread, I will go with Virginia Tech plus the 7. But you never know at the end of the game. Hey, Jerry, thanks for joining us. Welcome to Scott Selections. Overall, I think that the spread is high. I will lean Virginia Tech because I expect Virginia Tech to kind of copy what UCF did and just sag off Trey Jones anytime he's by the three-point line. I like him as a defender, Trey Jones. He can't shoot, and you kind of got to give him the Rondo treatment where you just don't guard him anywhere outside the free throw line because he's pretty much useless from anywhere outside. But I will be going towards Virginia Tech plus the points, and I also like the under in that game. But these teams have played each other multiple times, so you never really know because of the fact that this is an ACC matchup. These teams have a lot of film on each other, and it would not surprise me if these teams play very solid defense because of the fact that they've been able to scout each other's sets, and they will know what to expect moving forward. And thanks, Thomas. Glad you are enjoying the show. Sorry I don't have a play of the day as I usually do, but within these limited college basketball cards, I'm looking for value. And if I do not see value, I'm not going to force any picks if I don't see any value on the given card. But the last game, the late game on Friday that we're going to be talking about in the Sweet 16 matchup is between Kentucky and Houston. Now, I know that, as I said before, and I believe that the entire country is going to be rooting for a North Carolina-Kentucky matchup in the Elite Eight just because of the high profile and the prestige of both programs. This Houston team is really good. And I think Kelvin Sampson's done a great job of – first off, he did a great job at Indiana getting Eric Gordon and all those stuff before he ended up getting caught with that illegal infraction of calling recruits too many times on the phone, and he ended up having to leave. But he's been fantastic at Houston. They've been a top 25 team for the better part of the entire season, if not the entire season. And Houston in the tournament has looked great as they absolutely demolished Ohio State in the last round as well as Georgia State in the first round. Kentucky, it does matter on the status of P.J. Washington. Kentucky, Travis Reed stepped up as I thought he would in the interior. Harrow's played great. Johnson's played great. Kentucky definitely has more talent because every year they have a top 5 recruiting class. But Houston has the ability to make this game extremely competitive. it would not surprise me to see Kentucky trailing in the second half of this game. I will be going with Kentucky in this game just because I think that they will end up getting the job done because of sheer talent. And I personally think that P.J. Washington will be playing in this game. I've heard some early reports from local newspapers that P.J. Washington has started to practice a little bit more, and it is looking like he will be ready to play. Do I know how many minutes he's going to play, and will he be on a minute restriction? Probably, but it definitely will help the depth of Kentucky's front line, and I think that their height and their size will give Houston enough problems to get the job done. So just to recap quickly, my leans on the Sweet 16, Florida State plus 7.5, Tennessee minus 1.5, Michigan minus 1.5 if you can get it right now, Oregon plus 8.5, but I also like the Oregon first half money line if you can get that for a little extra coin. Florida State, same thing. I think Florida State, if they are going to cover this full game, they will need to play well in the first half. Moving on to the Friday games, I lean to the under in Michigan State LSU because of the fact that LSU tends to just get complacent in the second half, and I think Izzo will make a lot of defensive adjustments if needed in the second half. Auburn and North Carolina, I like the -5 for North Carolina and the over. For Duke and Virginia Tech, I like the under, and I like the under 144.5, and I like Virginia Tech plus 7.5, which is available at some spots right now. I expect that line to drop to 7 by tip in all books. And in the last game, I actually like the under in Houston and Kentucky at 135 right now at Bovada. Money's coming on the under, makes sense. Kentucky's played a lot of unders this year very underratedly, and that game against Wofford was a dead under. Houston has looked good offensively, but to have the ability to clamp down defensively as they've shown throughout the season. But those are going to be my picks for the Sweet 16 so far. Tomorrow, I will be having a pick of the day. It will probably be on one of the Thursday games in the NCAA tournament. And with that being said, thanks, Hank. Yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe if you actually enjoy the content on the show. Don't forget to, I gave this out yesterday, but if any of you also want to follow me on Twitter, where I just talk about the games itself, and I will also just give my thoughts on games that I'm watching. That is my Twitter handle if you want to follow me there for other content. Other than that, we're at roughly the 32, 33-minute mark. It's very nice to provide content for all of you, and I hope that all of you have enjoyed the show so far, as we are at about 2.5 to 3 weeks with this program. To answer your question, Thomas, did I hit my leans? Yeah, I went through the leans earlier today. I can go through those very briefly for you one more time if you wanted to, but I'm going to be going right after. I lean to Hampton -2 and the over. I lean to Marshall. I lean to Indiana. I lean to the over in Green Bay, Florida International, but that over is huge, so I wouldn't actually probably bet it. And TCU, I like at -3.5. My main two leans are going to be on TCU -3.5 and Hampton -2. But that's going to do it for this installment of Scott Selections. I hope all of you enjoyed. Sorry if you wanted a pick of the day, but as I said, I'm not going to be forcing anything. There will be a pick of the day tomorrow, though, so stay tuned. It should be coming out sometime in the mid-afternoon. So I will be using this live stream format. I hope all of you have enjoyed it. I thought about going back to videos, but I kind of like the ability to interact with the viewers, with all of you in the middle of my video. If you have any questions for me just in the video that I should address, or any games in particular. So I personally like the live stream formatting. And I know that I got Scott Steen on board on that. I got Scott Steen on that. He started live streaming also. And Mitch, thanks for joining us. Yeah, it was nice seeing you. I saw you over break, actually. Yeah, it's always nice having a troll who actually knows who you are. But other than that, have a good day, everybody, and good luck to you and your bets.